Okay, so we're supposed to be talking about seasonal affective disorder today. Welcome everybody to the Academy for Addiction and Mental Health Nutrition and our community forum on seasonal affective disorder and how we can support the brain nutritionally in the winter months or summer months if you're on the other side of the globe. There is not a ton, well, there's some research out there. So what I want to do is kind of present what I have found and then just open it to discussion and experience and kind of brainstorming. But I want to start before I get into the research with just sort of questions and experiences and what the three of you kind of know about it so far.
I would say I know people like someone who she actually was a middle school science and math teacher, so and she would get it. Really the main thing I know is the vitamin D. I don't know that I personally have ever really experienced it to any degree. So yeah, I don't know a lot more than that as far as support.
Okay. Well, that sounds good. So I was not really able to find statistics. Let's see. Yeah. On how many people that it actually impacts. But it is a actual diagnostic category. And it is a recurrent major depressive disorder. I'm in the community forum. Bye. So here's the abstract from a good overview. Seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, is a recurrent major depressive disorder with a seasonal pattern, usually beginning in fall and continuing into winter months. A subsyndromal type of SAD is commonly known as winter blues. Less often, SAD causes depression in the spring or early summer. Symptoms center on sad mood and low energy. Those most at risk are female, are younger, live far from the equator, and have family histories of depression, bipolar disorder, or seasonal affective disorder. Typical treatment includes antidepressant medications, light therapy, vitamin D, and counseling.
What can you guys hear me? Am I unmuted? Oh, okay, great. What I've seen bring up this subject has always been the hour change that happens during, winter time and springtime.
Right.
And they have somehow connected the circadian rhythm and the light to, be the culprit to kind of trigger such a symptom or a disorder, in people.
So Eileen, are you saying that it is being suggested that it is the change to and from daylight savings time that it disrupts the circadian rhythm significantly to trigger what we're naming seasonal affective disorder?
Exactly.
Well, that's an interesting proposition. Okay. Well, because it definitely does include disruption in the circadian rhythm. And the theory is that with lower light and a drop in serotonin production, that there is likewise an overproduction of melatonin that can contribute to this as well. And that certainly will disrupt the circadian rhythm. So what Dr. Gabby in nutritional medicine, Alan Gabby, the research that he references is that there is evidence that serotonergic dysregulation does play a role in the pathogenesis of SAD. Some drugs, the SSRIs have been used successfully, but in clinical trials, supplementation with tryptophan alone or in combination with bright light therapy was found to be beneficial.
Exactly. That's why
So
it's always suggested.
Right, and so he has several studies here indicating that.
Beautiful.
And then there is also, so I found that interesting, and I wanted to, from there, go to,
Which study is this, Christina? Do you have
So-
the link?
he has, what are his references for this? Clinical Psychiatry, Journal of Clinical Psychiatry, 1990, by McGrath and Buchwald, The Effect of L-Tryptophan on Seasonal Affective Disorder.
Mhm.
Then we have the Journal of Affective Disorder and Efficacy of Light versus Tryptophan Therapy in Seasonal Affective Disorder by a Gadirian, Ghadirian, and Murphy. And then we have tryptophan augmentation of light therapy in patients with seasonal affective disorder. So what they're finding is that combining light therapy with tryptophan is the most effective,
Okay.
but that tryptophan by itself can also be profoundly useful. And then it is moving over to vitamin D.
Mm.
And, vitamin D does so many things. And I wasn't able to find enough research on vitamin D, but there is definitely some. So Gabby has some research on vitamin D and seasonal affective disorder. In a double-blind study of 44 healthy volunteers, supplementation with 400 or 800 IU per day of vitamin D3 for 5 days during the winter was associated with an improvement in mood. In another study, administration of a single dose of vitamin D2, 100,000 IUs, to patients with SAD who had low vitamin D status. I think that is really important. Resulted in a significant improvement in depression. So what I have not found is a study correlating seasonal affective disorder with low vitamin D status. Now, maybe that study has been done and I haven't found it, but I think it would be very useful for all of us if our clients meet the diagnostic criteria for seasonal affective disorder to check their vitamin D status. And especially notice if it changes from the beginning of the winter season to the end of the winter season, and to what degree that correlates with their symptoms. We could even publish that study if we were able to get the diagnosis, formal diagnosis by a medical professional, and then track the vitamin D status. That would be a really, really interesting study to do.
Mm. This is Alan Gabby. It's Gabby. Is
Yeah,
that how
no.
it's spelled? Oh, okay.
Okay,
G-A-B-Y. MD.
GABY. Yeah, he's a very well-known nutritional doctor.
The Townsend Letter for Doctors and Patients,
Mhm.
that is a publication.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Is so, and I've seen his name and others for years.
Yeah.
In
That's
those.
where I've seen it. That's where I've seen it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Well, the very first course I ever taught on, what I teach you guys, the students, when the graduating class bought me this book, which I was so grateful for as a thank you. Now, I think he does have a new edition of it. It's a little pricey, so I haven't bought the new edition. But the old edition is, this is copyrighted 2011. And I think he does have a new one. Then there is a double-blind study examining the effect of 400 IUs on bone loss in women, found that vitamin D supplementation had no effect on seasonal changes in mood. However, the women in that study had reasonably good vitamin D status at baseline, did not have seasonal affective disorder, and received a relatively small daily dose of vitamin C. Okay, so you have to really look at the details in these studies. Now, he quotes the study that says that supplementing with melatonin with people with SAD, but it's a very tiny amount, received 0.125 milligrams of melatonin twice a day. This is teensy. And
Right.
that significantly improved their depression. So, in this other article I was reading is suggesting that too much melatonin is creating the sleepiness and lethargy of seasonal affective disorder. So, this is something that we can kind of play with.
Most definitely. Clearly, as you know, when there's signs of susceptibility of just mood dysregulation, and we add to that the deficiency of light and the disruption of the circadian rhythm, then we're more apt to see SAD in certain people, during those specific times, because that's when it happens. So it makes clear sense to me why it would. Dr. Andrew Huberman from the Huberman Lab podcast clearly indicates whether you have the tendency or not. He says just every single human being needs to see the sunlight through the eye the first half an hour to an hour of your waking moment, not afterwards, but in that time frame.
Yes, to set your circadian rhythm.
Exactly. I mean, he's not the only one saying it. Like gazillion people are now saying it. There's so much evidence in that. So prevention is key, if you make that the habit, but then when the season changes, it makes it difficult for people who have the tendency to get SAD, readjust themselves, and
it really does. It really does. Yeah. And getting out there in the first hours of daylight when it's really cold, is, a lot of people aren't going to want to do that.
Right. And it's not, you can't do it from behind the window. It's something about the cornea of the eye that needs to be in contact, even on a cloudy day. Apparently those photons are still actively doing their job. Like you may not see the sun. Like we've had rain in the we've had this crazy heat wave in LA, California. I'm sure you guys know, I don't know. It's been it's been
Horrible.
unbearable already. Like we couldn't even last at the beach. It was so bad. And since yesterday, we have this haze and this rain. Now it's like humid and hazy and cloudy, and
Has it cooled
kind of-
down at all, or is it still hot?
it has cooled down, but we're still in the 80s.
Yeah.
You know, it's not 100. But now we have the cloud and the rain since last night. It started yesterday at 4 o'clock. All of a
Interesting. Yeah,
sudden,
it's
dark.
still a little early for Los Angeles to get rain.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe it helped the drought a little bit. I don't know.
So
But
that would be good.
yeah,
It helps the damn fires.
Well,
it sure
that's true.
does. It sure does. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So this other article that I found, I can tell you what the article
This is all in his book.
No, I mean,
Oh.
what I was quoting to you was from Gabby's book. What I'm quoting from now, Seasonal-Affective Disorder, an overview of assessment and treatment approaches by Sherry Melrose, published in Depression Resistant Treatment in 2015. And she is saying that, what is she saying? She's saying that vitamin D, during the winter months of November through February, those living about 33 degrees north or 30 degrees south of the equator are not able to synthesize vitamin D. So that's interesting. And let's see. What was, oh yeah, light therapy. That it really is triggered by decreased daylight. And so light therapy has been extensively studied and has been shown to be useful. So you want the full spectrum light, you can get full spectrum light bulbs. You can get light boxes that emit full spectrum light. And you can get, so there's been research that shows that symptoms of SAD may be relieved by sitting in front of a light box first thing in the morning from the early fall until spring. So early fall is now, people. So this
Yes.
is why I decided to have today's community forum be on seasonal affective disorder, because early September is when a lot of people's moods start shifting.
Yes. We had a suicide next door.
Yeah. And this is the
Crazy.
time to start, you know, bringing in some 5-HTP, bringing in some tryptophan, checking your vitamin D levels, making sure that they're really, really solid, you know, to take you through the winter. Hi, Mary, welcome. So in the Scandinavian countries, light rooms where light is indirect and evenly distributed are available. But it says typically light boxes filter out ultraviolet rays and require 20 to 60 minutes of exposure to 10,000 lux of cool white fluorescent light daily during fall and winter, or an equivalent to fluorescent light. This is about 20 times as great as ordinary indoor lighting. Now, light therapy should not be used if you are on photosensitizing medications such as lithium carbonate, melatonin. So that's interesting because it's not telling you the doses of melatonin. And so I'd be interested in the studies of melatonin that can create a problem here. And I'm going to assume it's the much higher doses. Certain antipsychotics and certain antibiotics. Now,
Is
For
it the
some,
exposure, I'm sorry for interrupting,
on.
Christine. Does it mention, is it the exposure of the whole body to this light, or is it just the eye?
It's just the eye.
Okay, so they're saying that from
But I
the,
mean, we typically don't shine we typically are in a situation where a whole body gets exposed to the light. I mean, if you're sitting in front of a light box, I mean, your whole body is being exposed to the light.
I don't know, I would think that there are these light boxes that are like the size of a computer where you just kind of sit there and you're looking at it, and your your corneas are being exposed to it, not necessarily you're sunbathing or you're outdoors. I know that a lot of these antibiotic bottles will say that it's light sensitizing and don't go under the sun, but there's a difference between being exposed to a sun versus being exposed to light.
Well, and some of these medications, you're not supposed to like go sunbathing
Exactly.
or go
That's what I'm
to,
saying.
tanning beds. Yeah.
Right. So it's good to be able to distinguish between the two. Like,
Right.
are they meaning like you're not supposed to be under the sun,
Well,
or
they're
is it
not.
the light box?
Well, no, I mean, these medications will have warnings that you're not supposed to spend a lot of time in the sun.
Very
And
true.
that is also including light boxes.
I see.
Yeah, yeah. And then finally, this article, and I found this interesting, in one that counseling approaches can provide help and support to people with SAD. In one study, 6 weeks of cognitive behavioral therapy provided in group format during 2 90-minute sessions per week was as effective as 30 minutes of light therapy each morning. And so so even though you're depressed, changing the way you think, because you see what depression does, and whether it be low serotonin depression, low catecholamine depression, or any other sort of depression, it changes the way we think. So Kathy, it said the phenothiazine antipsychotics. I'm not sure which ones those are. Okay. And lithium carbonate. But depression and anxiety both change the way we think. It's almost like they create negative thoughts in us that are not true. I, tell myself when I'm in one of those states and my clients that the depression or the anxiety is actually lying to me. And so cognitive CBT therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy addresses the thinking, the negative thinking, and gives you more control over it, gives you ways to actually change your thinking. So we can change our brain using our supplements, etc., to change our thinking, or we can change our thinking. And there has been evidence that changing thinking actually changes neurotransmitter levels as well. So we can come at it from both sides.
Yeah, it's clearly seems to be bi-directional.
Bi-directional, exactly.
Yeah.
So let's not forget, I always believe in the three-legged stool. We want to support the biochemical leg of the stool. But let's not forget that there are also psychosocial and spiritual tools that we can bring in as support as well. But now is indeed the time to, start checking with your clients, noticing if any of their symptoms are getting worse, have them redo an amino acid therapy chart, have you yourself redo the amino acid therapy chart, and definitely every month through, fall, winter, and early spring to make sure that the numbers are holding And you don't need to be raising the doses of any of these supplements or bringing them back in.
Yeah, catch them before they fall.
Catch them before they fall, exactly, best you can, and catch them as it's falling.
Correct.
Now, I had heard rumors that hypothyroidism or, thyroid stress can impact one's susceptibility to seasonal affective disorder. I didn't find any research about that, so I don't really know if that's, to what degree that's happening. But, it's also, I think, important just to keep an eye on your clients', thyroid numbers. So any so there is some experience of people with for instance, bipolar disorder, that the depression can get worse in the winter, and that hypomania can actually occur in early spring and summer. Now, I didn't look for that research when I was preparing for this class, but I do have several clients for whom that correlation is actually quite clear, and who will have hypomania as with more sun exposure. So that would be worth kind of keeping an eye on with your clients who, either have full-blown bipolar disorder or are bipolar-y, which means, they swing, they may not swing enough to get a formal diagnosis, but they do swing.
Bipolar-y? Is
That's
that the
what I
word?
call it.
Bipolar.
Okay.
Okay, we
It's a
could say
Christina,
bipolar
it's
bear.
a Christina word.
it's a Christina word. We
Yeah,
could
I like
say
it. Got it.
bipolar-ish.
Bipolar. It's good. I like it. Yeah.
But
Now-
in other words, it's this subclinical swinging.
Uh-huh.
Got it.
Mary, thank you for that input. Have you yourself had experience with light boxes?
Christina,
Mhm.
the bipolar or bipolarish person gets hyperactive with more sunlight.
Some may,
Some.
yes. Mhm,
Some.
exactly.
You mean it triggers the condition because of the sun?
So I'm not going to make any definitive statements about this,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
but I am going to say, yes, that is a very strong possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And it's worth keeping your eye on in some people. So
Mhm.
like not everybody gets depressed in the winter when the light decreases.
Right.
Okay. Even
So,
people
yeah.
with depression don't necessarily get worse in the winter. The susceptible people do. Likewise, I'm saying that there appears to be a subset of people who have, swinging issues, whether they be full-blown bipolar or subclinical swinging from depressed to, a little hyper. The hypomania, full-blown mania may possibly get worse in when there's more sun exposure, more light exposure. Now, I have not done a literature search on this, This is really coming from my own clinical experience, so I don't know what the literature says. But I have had a significant number of clients for whom that's true.
So they get worse with the sun exposure, in
Yep.
other words.
The manic part of it gets worse, not the
Interesting,
depressive part of it.
interesting.
Mhm.
So all
Really?
I'm saying by that is, don't take this as gospel truth,
Yeah.
but take it as something to look at in your clients.
So when someone's hypomanic, as you mentioned,
Mhm.
Which gets triggered in early spring and summer, what does it look like? Are they
Increased irritability, increased insomnia,
uh-huh?
increased, I don't know that I want to say increased euphoria, but all of those hypomanic symptoms, grandiosity, increased optimism, possibly more pressured speech, more intensity.
Pressured speech, was that the word?
Yes. So do you remember when we talked about hypomania and mania in the level 2 class, Eileen?
Uh-huh.
That pressured speech is part of manic and hypomanic expression. And so people are talking really fast like this, and they're really intense, and they don't allow you time to say anything. And it's a little louder than usual, and it's a little faster than usual, and it's a little more intense than usual. And it's really overbearing, and it's really irritating.
Got it. Yes.
Okay. And people have no idea they're doing it. And you ask them to take a breath and slow down, and
Right.
they look at you blankly.
Come up for
and-
air.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. They look at you blankly and don't. Yeah. Yeah. Because this is a biochemical thing. So hypomania is visible. It's not subtle. Okay. Now, in human societies, we, and this is a good thing, we don't want to pathologize behaviors, that are sort of on the ends of, our nice little bell curve here, the outliers. And so we roll our eyes, we shrug, we, dismiss it one way or the other. But the reality is that when you see these signs of hypomania, you do actually need to take them seriously. Because it is a sign that there is some sort of imbalance going on. Don't just see it as a variant of normal, because it is actually beginning to cross that line into there's a problem here. Okay, anything else that, and I want to remind what Mary said, to everybody with eye conditions, it is best to position yourself to the side of the therapy light, not directly in front. This is true for people with macular degeneration, glaucoma, retinal repair, etc. Now, Mary made her light box out of a 2-bulb strip light, Vitalite full spectrum natural light. And was it helpful to you, Mary?
Yes, Christina, I use it in the fall and it helps me get through. I still have trouble with going down, depression, even though I live in New Mexico.
Mm, yeah,
So,
you have a really, really sensitive brain.
yeah, so well, I'll bring it in pretty soon. Last year, I didn't bring it in the fall, and I struggled from January, February, March,
Ah,
trying to catch back up.
so now might be the time to bring it in. You can just spend less time in front of it now. And then
Good
as it gets
reminder.
darker and darker, you can start spending more time in front of it.
All of them have still little juice.
So what I do is put it on a timer, so it'll wake me up in the morning and help shut off the melatonin.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. So you can get other light bulbs from, I also have gotten them from the hardware store, but you want to have at least 10,000 lux, they call it, or
Mhm.
10,000 Kelvin to make it effective.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah.
I'm
that-
bringing it in from the garage. Thank you for the
Oh,
reminder.
good for you, Mary.
And then usually how long do you expose yourself, Mary?
Probably 30 minutes to an hour in the morning. It'll wake me up, and then it helps, like I say, to turn off the melatonin. I mean what is it called?
Yes, it
Melatonin.
would help turn off melatonin production
Melatonin. Yeah.
and start increasing your serotonin production.
Yes. Yes. Because I notice, if I don't use it when I need it, then I can't feel right all day. I'm feeling off on
Mhm.
those days. That I don't get enough light. But it is biochemical. Yes, it is. That what's happening inside. It's important. I don't use melatonin. I'm kind of wary of using it for that reason. The other night I took sour cherry juice, and I feel like it affected me all day. I couldn't, that creates melatonin in the body,
It does.
So I guess that wasn't a good idea for me.
Sounds like you're really super sensitive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
you do the sour cherry because of the inflammation? You've got pain? Is that-
No, I do it to create the melatonin to help me fall asleep. And I hadn't tried it for a long time, so I bought some and did it just one night. And I noticed I couldn't snap out of it, all day. I felt.
How much did you, Mary? How much did you drink?
It's actually, I bought the sour cherry itself, not the juice. So I probably had 6 sour cherries.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So maybe you only need 3 sour cherries.
Yes.
So that's
So,
not very much. Yes,
Yeah.
people, sour cherry juice helps reduce anxiety and can help people sleep in the middle of the night. It also has a reputation for stabilizing blood sugar in the middle of the night. I keep forgetting this, but it does.
Mhm.
And so for people who are waking up in the middle of the night due to hypoglycemia, some sour cherry juice before bed is supposed to help with that.
yes. Thank you. So if you want to make your own light, I use like a garage, what would you call it? The strip light, you know, that you can just
Mhm.
plug in the wall. And you can actually get at a hardware store, you get these daylight mimicking bulbs. Like I say, they need to be at least 10,000 lux or Kelvin. And they're like, I paid $6 for each bulb. So it's you know, doable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're pricey for light bulbs, but very unpricey for, you know, to give you this type of support through the winter.
Mhm.
Very affordable.
Well, no, they're not. They're like, what are they? Almost 48 inches, the bulb itself. So I'm saying they're good price. They're
Yeah.
low. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. To put yourself one of these together, because I bought one at one point when I lived in Maine. I left it with my friend because I didn't think I'd need it. I was like $300 for the light at that time, like 25 years ago.
Mm,
So that's why I made it when I came here.
sure. Yeah, well, you know, New Mexico, well, certainly further south than Maine, is still not particularly close to the equator,
Yes.
you know, and there still are changes in, you know, when the sun rises versus when the sun sets. You know, what they've shown is that people living closer to the equator, where you have exactly the same amount of sun, you know, 6 hours of sun and 6 hours of, or whatever, 12 hours of sun and 12 hours of dark. That's where people are least likely, well, don't get seasonal affective disorder.
And I think it's because of being
shifting.
low on vitamin D, you know.
Well, that is certainly one of the contributors. Mhm.
Chronic for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, any other questions, comments, or stories before we call it a day?
Happy September Saturday.
Yes, I wish you all a very wonderful weekend.
Same.
I will not be present in 2 weeks for the consultation group, but we are trying to get, you know, some of our more knowledgeable people to step in so that the group will still happen.